Hello and welcome to lecture 6. This is a really practical one this time, so it's a bit different to the last time I spoke to you, where it was quite computer sciencey theoretical around the idea of functions and just managing information. This one is very specific to Unreal Engine, so we are going to spend the vast majority of the time actually in Unreal. I think I've got 2 slides here to talk over. Going to immediately cut to Unreal and pretty much stay in there until the end of the lecture. I'll chop it up into smaller videos, so this first one will be just a little overview of what's coming, and then a very basic, like here's a widget popped on screen, just so we can get them going. But as an overview, we're going to look at creating widgets. So if you've not heard the term widget, it's basically like the UI container in Unreal Engine. We're going to understand UMG content. So UMG is the sort of broader umbrella of Unreal motion graphics. We're not going to do tons of motion, but further down you'll see there the hint at adding some animation to a widget. You're going to be able to create bindings inside a widget. So bindings we will cover in a bit more detail, but basically lets you stitch some information into, say, a text field that will then constantly update itself as required. We're going to make use of level transitions. So a big part of task 6 is that you need to jump from level to level or reload a level when you die. So we're going to look at how you can do that. That's dead easy. And then we'll be able to add some animation to a widget. We're not going to dwell on this too much. It's not critical to task 6, but it is a useful thing to be able to add, especially when you go into your game beyond these weekly tasks, or if you're working on games in groups later on in different modules. So it's nice to know about, and then it will put you in a position where you can do all of task 6 and beyond. So yeah, just apply it correctly and you'll tick that box off. Okay, so a widget allows you to house like the visual and the technical side of a UI in one place. So they're really good. The new blueprints, so rather than making like actor blueprints like as you have in the past, we make a specific widget blueprint this time, and that lets you design on one tab, a bit like your viewport in a normal blueprint, and then do your scripting on another. So that just comes with 2 tabs in the same window, where you've got your design and your visuals, and then your actual scripting as well. So really good to have it all in one place. Down at the bottom is a link to Unreal's documentation on it, and there's a lot to dig through there. So once you go to that main landing page, you can dig into all sorts of different elements of it. And I'm very deliberately trying to make what I do in this tutorial, this lecture, recognizable from those, so that if you do make some use of that documentation, you've kind of got an anchor because you're already working on something that's a very similar setup. So yeah, there's loads of good stuff from Epic on it, so dig into it. Yeah, I'm going to jump into Unreal. Okay, so I'm here in the engine and I am in task 6. It's pretty much as yours will look, but I've brought some of the content that I made for task 5 in. So I've got a damage zone and a healing zone, and if we just have a very quick look, just in case you do decide you want to get to this point, I've literally just copied my content across where standing on this will eventually kill my player. I've added a feature where it just destroys the player when you die. There was a slight little text pop-up, but we're actually going to turn that into something a bit more user-friendly, where we like give them information, say they've died, and actually give them the opportunity to restart the level. But that's really all I've got, and we're just, for the sake of getting started, going to put something on screen using a widget. It doesn't really matter what at this point, and then we'll evolve that. So let's make a new blueprint first of all. So find a suitable place for it. The blueprints folder makes a lot of sense. And if you right click, this time instead of making a blueprint class as we have in the past, I'm going to come down to the bottom to user interface, and I'm going to make a widget blueprint. Give it a suitable name. So this is eventually going to be my player's HUD. So I'm going to actually call it player HUD. And then fire it up. And this will look a little bit different to the editor windows you're used to, but basically we've got 2 options. We've got the design view, which lets us visually build our UI, and we've got the graph, which should look fairly familiar. I'm not going to worry about the graph for now, but in the designer view, let's just have a very quick look at some very basic content. So on the left, you've got this palette here. We could bring in like a button if you decide you need something interactable, but I don't. I do want an image eventually, so that image is a bit dull, but we can change it later, and maybe some text just to illustrate a couple of bits. So if I put this text down in the bottom right corner, Notice that it's got this big sort of flower looking thing in the top left, and this is your anchor, and this is really important when you're designing your UI, especially if your game's going to eventually be on different sort of resolutions. So the anchor is the point of the screen that your content tries to move with. So having some text in the bottom right corner here that's anchored to the top left is a bit weird, because if the player shrinks their screen like horizontally, this text is actually going to go off the right of the screen. So ideally, with this text selected, if we click on anchors here, we want to change the anchor to be the bottom right corner. So now this text will try to follow the bottom right. So even if we shrink the screen in, this text knows it's offset from the bottom right corner, and it will move accordingly. We'll do something similar with this image as well. So this image might eventually be a crosshair, and let's just maybe exaggerate it for now. So on the details panel, I'm going to find its size and just maybe make it 40 by 40 so it is actually a square. And then you might think, oh, I'm just going to eyeball it into the middle. But what you can do is when you set the anchor, because in this case it makes sense for it to be anchored to the middle of the screen, you can also set its position. So as well as just clicking to set the anchor in the middle, if you hold Control when you do it, it will snap to the middle. Now there's a slight issue, so I've just rolled my mouse wheel to zoom in. You can see that it's actually anchored to the top left corner, and we can fix that with the alignment here. So the alignment is from 0 to 1, so whether it's the left edge or the right edge, I'm going to make it in the middle. So 0.5 for the X, 0.5 for the Y, and we've got a nicely centered crosshair now. We might come back and replace this with a real image, but let's just get it on screen. I'm not too bothered about what my how high quality the visuals are. I just want it to all to work. Let's maybe just change this text. This can be a reminder of my student name. Let's go Ant, and let's align the text to the right. And I'm going to save that, compile it, and then when I hit play, obviously nothing happens. We need to now tell the game, or the task at least, that it needs to make use of that widget. So to do that, I'm going to edit it into my player so that throughout the project, wherever my player appears, it will have that HUD. So I'm going to fire up my player blueprint. Mine's got all the content from the previous task, and then I've just got these extra little bits to work in for now. So we've got a die function for later on, a die event, sorry, where we can pop up a menu, but we don't need to worry about that for now. But we've got a begin play, which is really useful for spawning in the HUD. So I'm going to drag off begin play, and I'm going to create a widget. So this node lets you specify the widget blueprint class that you want to use, so player HUD, and it lets you set the owning player. Now you don't actually need to set the owning player for the sake of having it appear, but it's a good habit to get into because there are certain other nodes that do really need this. So you should get in the habit of adding it. So let's get player controller. There we go. Just told it which player owns this widget, and then that still isn't enough. So if I compile it, save it and play, we still don't see that widget. We need to actually add it to the screen, and we do that by dragging this return value off. So this is actually a reference to that newly created widget, and we just want to choose add to, and you've got a couple of options, but in this case and for the rest of the lecture, viewport is fine, especially considering the tasks that we're working on. So we're going to add that widget to the viewport, and that should now fix everything. Play it, and you can see I've got that very obvious crosshair in the middle. It's not actually linked up with where my bullets go, just due to the way we've fired. We could maybe look at that. If you're using the line tracing method of shooting, that will be fine. We can do some flowery stuff later on to make it actually show where this gun is aiming as well, but for the sake of getting set up, we'll ignore it. You can see we've got the text in the bottom corner as well, so everything's displaying. It's anchored quite nicely as well. So in terms of getting started, I think we've got enough there. I did say I'd maybe change that crosshair image, so let's have a little look at that. Not in the character, in the HUD. So let's pick this image and find its appearance there. So under brush, we've got this image, and I've actually brought a crosshair texture into my project. I might struggle to find it. Oh, there it is. Let's see how it looks. Yeah. It's actually smaller than the size. So what you can do is you can have it size itself to the content. It will just scale up to match that sort of natural size of it. I compile that and save it and give it a go. See, I've actually got an image that's been brought into the project. So it was literally just a case of dragging a PNG into the content browser. And that's part of the project now, so that already looks a little bit better. Okay, I'm going to stop this video here. So that's how we get a widget onto the screen, and that's enough for now.